All right, so we're talking about driving user research in a tough organization. So there are two parts to this topic. There is user research, which we all know is important as a product person for you to do within your product organization. It's crucial. It's one of those things that you can't do without, right? Um, and then you have in a tough organization. So what do you do when you're faced with this conflict, right? You need to do user research, but you are in an organization that is tough, in terms of allowing you execute on this, right? And like I mentioned earlier, before most of us joined, there are a lot of skills that you're going to need. You need to be smart. You need to have tenacity. That's grit. You need to have a lot of grit. You also need to be empathetic, empathy for your customers, empathy for the stakeholders that you're dealing with. You need to also have courage, right? So it takes all of these things. But I'm going to be giving us a few tools today to help us in our different organizations, irrespective of wherever you find yourself, right? So I asked the question earlier as well, why is user research important? And somebody said that it's important so that you don't end up cooking beans, right? As a PM or as a product org. And I agree with them, right? And so we have, what exactly is user research? So let's begin by first of all understanding what user research is. So user research is the systematic process of learning directly from users. This definition is twofold as well. You have systematic process and you have learning directly from users. So a systematic process means that the structure to how things are done, a structure that has been tried and tested and has better results over time in different circumstances and situations, right? And then learn directly from customers means that you're not learning from your own ideas or your thoughts or what somebody thinks from your team or what somebody thinks the customer thinks, right? Because there's that as well. And it's so easy to fall into that trap. So that you are actually engaging directly with your users and learning from them, which is extremely important as a product person. And why do we do this as product people? Doing this so that product decisions are based on evidence and not assumptions. I don't have biases, and it's easy for us to, we are mostly typically blind to the biases that we have. And the same for assumptions. When we make assumptions, except risk awareness, most times you're not aware of the gaps in these assumptions that you're making. So validation is super important so that you validate all of the assumptions that you're making. Then there are different methods when it comes to user research, but some of them are interviewing. So how do you recruit the people that you interview, right? How do you determine what customers to recruit? How do you create the system to ensure that you're getting that these customers are agreeing to like interview with you? How you your script, your interview script, right? As well as how you analyze the feedback from your interviews, right? So the notes, the recordings, how you like synthesize the information and share to different stakeholders across your team. All of that falls under interviews. And then we have observations, things like usability testing, ethnography, fall under observations, right? Where you closely observe your customers in different scenarios as they use your products, right? Or as they live their daily lives. And then we have data. Data is also super important. Numbers are extremely important. And then we have experiments. I mentioned earlier that I believe every product team should be running experiments, A/B testing, just running different types of experiments. It's one of the strongest ways to validate your ideas, especially before you scale them or before you invest significant engineering resources. And I also mentioned that depending on the stage of your product organization, it's important that you have dedicated growth teams that are running experiments across different touch points, like customer acquisition, activation, retention, engagement, resurrection, and monetization. Because you're not getting optimal value from your product or your business and your customers if you're not running product experiments. That's just the honest truth, right? So it's important that we avoid assumptions and leveraging different user research levels. And then, why is user research crucial? It's crucial for so many reasons, but I'm just going to highlight some of them here. The first one is risk, right? It reduces the risk of building the wrong thing. If you're a product manager here or you've been a product manager for a while, at some point in your career, you or somebody you know must have invested significant time and effort into building something that ended up flopping significantly, right? There is I always say that there's everything you put on your roadmap is a risk, is a bet. You're making a bet, but you want to make sure that you're making stronger bets. And how do you make sure you're making stronger bets? Stronger bets are bets that are much more likely to succeed in the market, right? How do you make sure you're making some stronger bets? You make sure you're doing that by doing proper validation, right? For every initiative you have, yeah. And one way to do this is to do proper user research. And I mentioned that when we build products as product people, new products, our primary goal is to achieve product market fit, as we all know, right? And the two key metrics for product market fit: acquisition and engagement. So you want to make sure that that's acquisition and retention, right? You want to make sure that you are acquiring as many users as possible, that many people are as many people as possible are adopting your product. And out of those people who adopt your product, a significant number of them are retained within the product and are using your product, right? That's how you can achieve product market fit. And even when you achieve product market fit and get to the growth stage, adoption and retention are lifeblood for your product, which and adoption and retention now feed into revenue, of course, right? So when you do proper research, it increases proper user research, it increases your chances for achieving product market fit or hitting your revenue goals, amongst other things. And then opportunities, right? If you do user interviews well, you would have a lot of aha moments, right? There are some aha moments that you would hit in user interviews that you know that if I had not done this user interview, I would never have realized this. Yeah, I still experienced this on Friday. I had a user interview last week, Friday, right? Where like I spoke to a customer. It was an interview that lasted for about an hour with a power user. And there were some things he said on that call. And I was like, wow, if I didn't have this conversation with this particular customer, I would not have realized this particular thing, right? So you don't get to, you're not big, you're not too big. You never get to a point where you are too big to be doing user interviews. Maybe you've been in the industry for so many years. You feel, oh, I don't think I should be talking to my customer anymore because I know everything, right? You should constantly have a structure within your team where you're constantly talking to customers, right? And then, sorry, Elera, you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I missed some part of the conversation, so I wanted to ask: would this be recorded
Yeah, I
for
think
later?
so. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's being recorded and it will be shared after the session.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome.
And then I also spoke, another thing is great product leadership, right? At the core of every successful product organization is great product leadership. And at the core of every great product leadership is empathy. As PMs, PM 101, we are always told, oh, you need to have empathy for your customer. You need to have empathy for your business. I want to let you know that that never gets old. At any stage where you are, at any stage in your product career, you need to have empathy. So empathy is literally the bedrock of product management. That's what I believe 100%, right? And when you do user research, it helps you build empathy as a PM. You're not out of touch because it's very easy to get out of touch, right? Of your customers, what their daily experience is, how they are feeling, what their pain points are, what their motivations are. It's so easy to lose touch, right? And you want to make sure that that never happens. And one way to solve for this is to make sure that you're constantly talking to your customers, right? So next slide. So what are some of the signs of a top organization? Who wants to go?
Stakeholders want to enforce their ideas.
Okay, thank you so much, Henry. That's wonderful. Akano, sorry if I pronounce your name wrongly. I'm so sorry.
Sure. Sorry. I'll go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Development.
Oga-driven, wonderful, wonderful. Daberechi, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to mention where every single request or every idea from management is like a priority, where there's no focus on what to do.
Wonderful, wonderful. Jonah, you can go ahead.
Where people are being micromanaged, like the previous person just said, where your opinion doesn't matter. People are just being managed and there is no well-structured format where people follow. Everybody is just making decisions off of their head.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Elera.
I'll say features not being prioritized for the team to look at and go at the right time.
Yes, that's true. Any other person? Okay, I think that's all. Wonderful responses from everybody. Well done, guys. All right, so signs of a tough organization. First one is, of course, organ-driven development. It's something I hear a lot from PMs. I don't know, people just say organ-driven development. So I decided to put it as number one here. So it's a company culture where, we always do what the boss says. The boss drives the roadmap. The boss drives, what we build. A lot of these organizations don't even have a product strategy or or a product vision narrative. You can wake up in the morning and the direction has changed. So it's a very chaotic environment to be in. And my heart goes out to anybody that is currently in this situation. Then we have the feature factory mindset. That's another sign of a top organization. So a feature factory mindset is a mindset where let's just ship things. That's what gets rewarded in the organization. Value is measured by what you ship, how fast you ship. Research is viewed as a waste of time. Yeah, nobody wants to hear that. I want to research. Nobody cares. Let's just ship. Let it just go live. And the people that everybody claps for is the PM that has shipped the most features, the most number of products or features, right? And then politics. Politics is such a real thing in a lot of organizations, yeah. So a lot of people are now scared of, voicing out the thoughts from customers or what customers say because they don't want to lose political capital within the organization. They don't want to lose political capital, right? So they want to be in favor of the bosses so bad that they would not say something. Okay, say that I interviewed the customer and the customer said something that was contradictory to what the boss said. Yeah. So there's no psychological safety within that organization. That can be a big problem. And then we have the hero culture. This is another sign of a tough organization to be in. The hero culture is when smart answers matter over learning. There are people that know how to talk. How many of us have met those kind of people? They know how to sound smart. Let me see your hand if you've met people like that. And there are cultures that reward this kind of people. Like they rise quickly through the ranks. They know how to talk. They are very charismatic. They know how to put words together. And so people are scared to say, let me research that. I don't have all the information. Let me get back to you. Let me do some research. People are scared that if they say that, they come off as sounding wrong. So they don't want to say that. They don't want to say, I'm going to do further research. Right? So that's a hero culture. And then we have silos where different teams, just work separately from other teams and nobody is sharing information with anybody. Customer success is working in a silo and silo differently from product, right? Product is not communicating with customer success is not communicating with product. So this person has information that might be vital to what product is building, but they're not sharing it with product. And product has information that could be vital to customer success or other things, but they're not sharing because everybody is in a silo, right? That's also a tough organization. Another one is output over outcomes. This one is also very similar to a feature factory. But in this organization, your KPIs are tied to outputs. How many people did you talk to? Not customers, right? Maybe in a day, how many meetings did you have? Just very weird metrics like that. How many features did you ship? Outputs as opposed to business outcomes, strong business outcomes like a number of active customers, number of customers acquired, number of customers that were onboarded, time to onboard, time to this, time to that, strong business metrics, revenue, things like that, right? Outcomes over outputs. But in a lot of these top organizations, they value outputs over outcomes. Yeah. Another sign of a top organization is weak product leadership. A situation where, for example, product leadership undermines user research. There are people who find themselves in situations like this, and that's the honest truth. Where the product leadership doesn't really invest in that or advocate for that. And usually the entire organization adapts to the body language of the product leadership that's present within the organization. So if you have a situation like this, chances that user research will be supported is very, very slim. You're not going to get the necessary resources or time to get this done. And then we have sales or compliance driven, organizations where the loudest customer's voice is what dictates the roadmap, or the customer that's bringing in the most amount of money or something, right? They are the ones that dictate the roadmap here around, right? And then we have compliance driven orgs where risk avoidance is the most important thing. We don't care about innovation. Let's just avoid risk at all costs, right? Compliance and risk, they are extremely important, right? Roles like compliance, risk, security, they are extremely important. But you also want to make sure that you're not stifling innovation in the process. And then we have lack of resources, right? When the company doesn't care about investing in user research, lack of data, all of these things are signs of a tough organization. So yeah, working in this type of company is the ghetto. Is the ghetto. So we're going to be talking about how you can survive in this kind of company if this is your situation. And my heart goes out to you if this is your situation, right? But you have to do what you have to do, right? Because it's where you found yourself in. So how do you survive? And beyond even surviving, how do you thrive as a product manager in this kind of situation? So the first thing, I have a lot of options for you, right, or solutions. But one of the first things I want to discuss is to set up feedback readers and add all key stakeholders, right? So I'll begin by explaining what feedback readers are. There are different ways to automate user feedback. So when you talk about user research, there are so many methods, but there are some ways to automate some forms of user feedback in such a way that they come to you as opposed to you going to seek them out. You need to also do the seeking out part 100%. So it's a combination of both parts, right? So there are user research methods that you have to do that involve you seeking them out, like customer interviews, surveys, a bunch of different things, right? But then there are methods that you can put in place or systems you can put in place that bring customer feedback to you. And I would get a bit more practical. So one of those methods, for example, could be if you have a mobile app and a web app, you could set up an automation that feeds any review or ratings you get into a Slack channel or an email account, right? So there are tools like app review bots, yeah, and they are pretty cheap actually. You can check them out. They help you channel whatever review or rating you get from the App Store or Play Store to your Slack channel. And so you can set up something like that and add all key stakeholders to that Slack channel. And by the time they see somebody review about your app that counters their own idea, you're not the one coming to tell them now that, oh, I think you need to pay attention to this, but they are seeing it because it's on Slack. By the time they open their Slack, it's there front and center. They see 1-star rating. And humans are emotional, to be very honest, right? So we are easily triggered by, oh, I'm waking up night and working on this product, right? Morning till evening, even beyond my normal 9 to 5, and somebody is giving my product 1-star. What's this person even saying? And so they read the person's review. So that's one way to do it. Another way is when you automate surveys, right? And you automate the responses from that channel or to an email, right? So you can use tools like Hotjar to do that. So there are different tools that you can explore. Or then there are also tools that allow you, when somebody mentions your brand somewhere on specific channels, you route them to a particular maybe Slack channel or email, right? There's another tool called trying to remember the name, Instabulb. Yeah. So there is a way you can, connect it to your app. If someone's in app at different touch points, right, where someone is interacting with your apps, these are mostly B2C examples, but you can also connect them to B2B products as well. When somebody is interacting with your app and, they are at any particular point and they have any feedback for you, they can just shake their device and drop feedback for you. And you route all of those responses to a Slack channel and you add all the stakeholders there. Right. So these are multiple examples of feedback rivers, right? So feedback rivers are very difficult to ignore. Yeah, that's why it's a very effective tool. By the time these stakeholders start to see how important this feedback is, their body language begins to adjust because they start to see, oh, it's important that I'm actually listening to what customers are saying because it counters some of my assumptions and I should really be paying attention here. Yeah, and then when you propose and it's some sort of investment, towards customer research, they are more receptive, to putting in, the required investment. And then another example I'm going to give, solution 2, often you do your research first and then you present the insights. When you work in a tough organization that doesn't exactly support user research, you don't want to go and meet your key stakeholders and say, oh, I want to take 3 weeks to, do detailed customer interviews. I want to take 3 weeks to do ethnography. nobody is going to support that, because what the heck is iconography? Like, I don't care about that. Let's just ship this and call it a day, right? But like when you come and say, oh, I spoke to 8 users, right? And I thought I thought you'd want this before we finalize on this decision. People would be more receptive to that, right? And there's a right sometimes that I really believe in. Sometimes it's better for forgiveness after. It's sometimes better. So there are situations you'll be in that you need to act first. Of course, you need to apply discretion, but you need to act first and then you ask for forgiveness later. And I believe this is one of those situations, right? So you apply yourself, get that customer feedback yourself, and then come and tell your key stakeholders that, CEO, I already did this, and I think you should pay attention to these insights, right? Another so yeah, I put some highlights here for doing permissionless research, right? Research where you don't have to ask for permission. The first one is to call 2 to 3 customers per week as part of your PM routine, right? So just put it on your calendar and create a system around you that you're going to call 2 to 3 customers per week, right? So if you have concerns around maybe using your phone number to call customers, there is a tool that's there's a tool called Press One. And I really love the tool so much, right? I think you should check it out if you have concerns around that. If you're trying to not rock the boat and you're not getting support, I think you should actually check it out because it's very cheap and you can pay in Naira, right? And you're able to call 2 to 3 customers per week as part of your PM meetings. Just create a structure around that. And when you do that constantly, you're going to get a lot of insight that you can use to defend your case when you speak to stakeholders. And then another way to do permissionless research is to read support tickets and observe support calls, right? So on a lot of I'll share a list of the tools, no problem. On a lot of our teams or our companies, we use some of us use Intercom, some of us use Zendesk. So depending on the tool you use, so just your support team, ask them to the tool, right? So that you can read support tickets, right? And then run quick WhatsApp chats with power users, right? Having calls with customers, you have established relationships, you can just ask them, would you mind me messaging you on WhatsApp or Telegram if I have any questions? A lot of them would be very willing to, right? They don't have a problem with that. And you need some quick customer feedback. You can just message some of your customers, right? Your active customers and say, oh, what do you think? What do you think? Ask them questions. And those are quick ways to get permissionless research. And another way to, do user research in a tough organization is to reduce the ask size. Yeah, so you don't want to go at people who are not receptive to customer feedback or user research, ask for something massive. You want to start small, or you want to ask for something to check on assumptions. The top 2 risks with 3 users, right? Because most times when we're like building products, right, or improving on whatever we're building, there are actually risks involved that we're not validating enough. That's the honest truth. Yeah, so I always say that especially when we're building new products, there are aspects of your strategy. You need to first of all have a product strategy. That's a whole different conversation. I love product strategy so much, by the way. So a product strategy, and you need to identify aspects of your strategy that have the highest amount of risk. Yeah. Is it your business model? Is it the problem you're solving? Maybe there's just something about the problem you're solving that's not clear enough, or you're not sure about. There's just some reservation. Or maybe there is maybe it's the value prop, right? The benefits that your product offers, right? There are like risks involved that you need to validate. So you can just propose something. I say, let me just speak to 3 users. Yeah. And then you can say something like, I'll bring the 1-page insight summary. So 1 page is short, people can read that easily. Yeah, so small asks. Another thing is you want to disguise. So remember we said earlier that you have to be very smart, right? You have to play smart here. So you want to disguise research as other activities, especially when you're working with people who are not product managers. Yeah. So instead of using labels so you want to use labels that feel safe. Yeah. Instead of saying things like, oh, I need to do some usability tests, you can say something like, oh, let's do usability QA. everybody knows what QA is, yeah. So they are more likely to be positive about it and to be receptive to that. And then when you say, oh, instead of saying I want to do discovery calls, as PMs, we always like to throw the word discovery around, product discovery, customer discovery, but to people who are not PMs, those are big words. Like when you're working with stakeholders, you want to simplify it, or you want to disguise your research, especially when you work in a tough organization. You can say, oh, I want to have a customer listening session, right? Or I carried out a customer listening session, things like that. Then support shadowing instead of ethnography, right? So ethnography is when you like deeply observe your customer in their natural habitats to draw conclusions or get insights from them. But like you can say things like support shadowing. I want to shadow, as opposed to saying I want to carry out ethnography. And then product sanity checks instead of generative research. So these are like simple words that you can use instead to disguise your research, right? And gain the kind of support that you need. So yeah, I give an example. I shadowed Joy on the support team for some time last Friday. Yeah. And then you want to use micro research methods that don't require money or a lot of money or a lot of time, or just micro research methods, right? Some examples that I put here: 5-minute interface walkthroughs, in-app intercept questions. So at some point in your app or your products, you can ask questions, right? So for example, if a customer is carrying out a transaction and they complete that transaction, I know sometimes you see it in our bank app where like a pop-up shows, and even it's on child deck, for those of us that use child deck, right? You're asked to maybe rate or drop a comment. Yeah, so that's customer feedback, that's user research, right? So just find ways in your app that you can where you can get customer feedback from. And then we have heat maps, click streams, and support tickets. Heat maps, for those of us that don't know what heat maps are, it's basically a chart that shows the activity of customers on your product. So the pages that they view, the buttons that they click, if there's any page where they were stuck and then they had to click multiple times, it shows up as in red as a rage click, right? So you have a heat map. You can see how users interact with your product. Then if you so in the top organization might not support that, but I was going to also suggest, so for heat maps, I think Microsoft Clarity is a free tool that does that. Then you have PostHub. PostHub is also very cheap. These are tools that can help you with. Oh no, PostHub doesn't do heat map. Hotjar does heat map as well. For mobile apps, UXCam, but UXCam is pretty expensive. A cheaper option, I don't think PostHub does heat map. I need to confirm that, right? But Hotjar does heat map. Microsoft Clarity also does heat maps. UXCam for mobile apps as well does heat maps. Then dog fooding sessions, right? I was also going to mention session recordings. Hotjar does session recordings. So session recordings are like when you have it on your products that record specific sessions, right? Of course, it hides sensitive information. So, there are all of these security concerns. You want to make sure that it aligns with that, data laws and privacy, amongst other things. But you're able to basically see recordings of how users interact with your app, right? Your products. And it's very, very important that you're making all of these observations. So these are ways, micro research, right? So you can use free tools like Microsoft Clarity, or tools that are not as expensive, things like that. And then you have dog fooding session where you can get people on your team to actually use a product or a feature that you built, right? And then fake dot tests. Yeah, it's also a very quick and easy way to do micro user research. A fake dot test is basically when you put a prompt, right, within your product to test, to see if people are willing, or if people want to use that feature or that product, right? So for example, you want to launch, there was one example of when I did this was when at Quidax, we wanted to launch a card product, right? And we wanted to test to see if it was something that people really needed, right? A lot of our customers really needed. So we had a button within the app that said cards. And when people would click it, it would take them to an onboarding flow for cards, right? So onboarding flow that shows, how it shows benefit screens, right? And let's call them benefit screens as part of the onboarding flow that tells you what that product does or the benefits you get from using that product. So just basically 3 screens that tell you, fund your card with crypto, you can pay on this with your card. And then when you click on it, you now join a wait list, right? So a lot of people clicking those buttons and even dropping their information to join a wait list showed us that a lot of people were interested in that product or that feature. So it's a very low risk way to validate a product's idea or a feature idea before you invest engineering effort and resources into building that product or feature, right? And then you build research into work that's already being done. So this is another method that you can adopt. So one way to do it is for those of us that work in B2B, right? For example, I work in both B2C and B2B. So you have sales calls if you work in B2B, yeah? And even for B2C, right? So there's, I don't want to go into that, right? But when you have sales calls, at the end of your sales calls, you can just add 2 questions, yeah? Or 1 question or 3 questions that product, that user research, right? So it's part of the sales calls, so people don't really mind, yeah? And then you add 1 hypothesis validation step into sprint retrials. For those of us that use Agile, Scrum, Kanban, that run sprints at our companies, and you have all these rituals, you have sprint planning, you have retrospective, you have all of these things. So you can add your hypothesis validation step to your sprint rituals, yeah, to help out. And then you add, what did we learn this week in your retro? Yes, as part of our retros, for those of us who do retros, yeah. So what did we learn this week? And then during that, at that point, you can talk about some of the insights from user research, especially when in those retro calls, you're speaking to engineers and designers, just members of the development team. So it's an opportunity for you to introduce this customer insights to the conversation. Okay, so how do we influence without authority? Because as product managers, we find ourselves in a lot of situations where we have to influence, but we don't really have authority, especially if you're not a product lead or, product director, head of products, all of those things. But you have to lead without authority. You have to influence multiple stakeholders without authority. As we mentioned earlier, we have to be smart here. Okay. So the first one is, how do you narrative framing? Is how you frame the conversation or what you're saying, right? So start with stakes. What is at stake here? One of my mentors always says, when you're negotiating with somebody, 101 of negotiation is to find out what that person stands to gain from that and play to that. What they stand to gain or what they stand to lose. What are they worried about? And then play to that, leverage that in your negotiation. So you want to start from, okay, this person's interest, is what they need. How do I help them with this, for example, right? Or how do I frame it in such a way that it mirrors their interests? So that's what we're trying to do here. So you can say, we are about to invest 6 months into this. Let's reduce the odds of failure by checking assumptions. So what you've done here is you've shown them what is at stake. All these engineers, all these commercial stakeholders are going to invest 6 months into this project. How about we spend 1 day or 2 days, maybe 3 weeks, right? To validate this assumption or a few assumptions that we're making here before we invest these 6 months. So you started with what's at stake, the 6 months that is at stake, the resources that they are going to be investing that's at stake, everything that's at stake, you've started with that, right? And then you want to things that you can also say, I want to protect the team from rework. When you say rework, nobody wants to do one work 5 times or even 2 times, right? I want us to ship fast. Fast learning enables fast building. So when you play to their interests, they want us to, you're talking to your CTO and CTO was like, I just want us to go to market fast. I say, yes, I also want us to ship fast. When we ship fast, we are able to learn fast. And they know that, first of all, it signals to them that, this person is on my team. This person is, we are in the same boat here. We are on the same page here. And then you can now come in with insights right after that. Another thing is political intelligence. Yeah. Politics is not a dirty game, right? I hate dirty politics. I really don't even like playing politics. Like when I work with people and they're playing politics, I hate it so much, right? But you need to have political intelligence, especially as a PM, for you to succeed within the workplace. And one of the ways to have political intelligence or to apply political intelligence when you work in a tough organization is to identify the research-friendly ally within your org. So if I go into a room with stakeholders, and I'm the only one I have 5 stakeholders with me in that room, and I'm the only one advocating for something, and I don't have anybody in the room that's supporting me. Don't you know that that's already, it's already a problem? Yeah, chances that I'm going to get out of that room with what I want is very, very low. So before you get into the room, you want to make sure that a few people in that room are on your side. So how do you do that? You first of all identify who are the people on this team that even know the importance of user research. Who are people on this team that have experience, that have marked stripes on their back, maybe people that have built products, that have, without doing user research in the past, and they saw how that product flopped, they saw how much resource was wasted. Those people are more likely to have your back, right? And you go and have a conversation with them before making sure that you have their support before going into the room with every other stakeholder, right? Then you want to identify the blocker. Who is that executive? In strong intuition. Who is that person that, and whatever you say, that person has very strong opinions about, user research is a waste of time. Yeah? So you want to influence the ally first, gain momentum, and then present the blocker last, like I said, right? So you want to get the ally on your side, or the allies on your side. You want to get pre-alignment with key people, very, very important, before going into the room to have a conversation with everybody. So some people are on your side, right? And then data storytelling. A lot of us, as PMs, we always talk about, data is important, but it does not stop in data. Storytelling, I say, like, as a PM, you need to learn how to tell stories. Like, storytelling is one of your superpowers, your strongest superpowers as a product manager, right? So you want to learn how to tell stories. So how do you use data to tell a story, right? So you frame, you tell a story, you give examples, but you fuse it with data, right? It's not just showing numbers to people. Numbers are strong, but when you combine data and storytelling together, your case is even stronger. Okay, next slide. So I'm just going to walk through a few case studies to make this a bit more concrete for us before we bring this conversation to a close. The first case study that I'm going to be walking us through is the case study of the PM in a feature factory. So we explained what a feature factory is earlier. A feature factory being a place where, people just ship features. People don't care about outcomes. They don't care about the impact of what they ship. They are rewarded for, how fast they ship, how many features they ship, how many products they ship. So the situation is that the org measured PMs by number of features shipped, 0 research culture. I want to ask a question, if you're in an organization that's like this, raise your hand. But I know that a lot of us would be too shy to raise our hand, so I'm not going to ask that question. Oh, you're in an organization like that? Wow, I'm so sorry, Dabirichi. My heart goes out to you. It's actually a very tough situation to be in, But yeah, it's the reality of a lot of people, a lot of PMs actually, because I hear stories. So yeah, org measures PMs by number of features shipped, 0 research culture. And then the task is to prevent a massive 4-month build that solves the wrong. The funny thing about organizations like this is that they make these kinds of mistakes, but because they don't have a culture of learning, in a lot of cases, they don't learn from it. In a lot of cases. So they just go ahead and keep making the same mistakes or similar mistakes, until a very huge mistake happens that they maybe cannot recover from, or maybe they manage to recover from, or maybe they are able to have some successes here and there, so they are not really paying attention and they just continue like that. Yeah, it's just sad. Yeah. And then the action that the PM takes in this situation, as smart product manager, that a PM conducts permissionless research, right? The person has interviews with 7 power users, support shadowing, and 1 fake dot test. And what result was gotten? It revealed that users did not want the feature, right? Which means they would have invested 4 months and they would have built and shipped something that failed if the PM did not do this, right? So they wanted an improvement to an existing flow instead. That was what customers wanted. Yeah. And then the PM was able to save 4 months shifted roadmap. Exec said, okay, we need more of these quick checks you're doing. So you see, the PM did this, and then the exec was able to see the value of doing these kinds of user research, and the the exec now supported it fully. Our second case study is the anti-research CTO. You know, sometimes you think that the person that's going to be against your user research is going to be maybe a commercial exec like COO, you know, people who are not as in touch with the technology side of the, you know, of things, right? But sometimes your pushback can be coming from the CTO, right? So the CTO says we can't slow engineering down for research. Yeah, because most CTO, there are CTOs that are just so focused on engineering, that are engineering driven, that they don't really value, you know, a number of product practices like user research. And your task is to reduce resistance as the product manager, right? You have a task to reduce resistance. And then the action here that the PM takes is that the PM renames sessions to engineering QA on user flow assumptions. Yeah, so you have to be smart. Remember what we said about renaming some of your user research practices. Yeah, engineers attended, they saw real users stuck on step 3. Results, CTO became pro-research, right? Saying, this is just QA for our roadmap. Let's do it every sprint. Case study 3, the overconfident sales-led org. Yeah. So sales insisted they all understood customers. The task of the smart PM was to validate the risk around the new onboarding flow. Yeah. The salesperson already said, oh, I already understand customers. I always talk to customers, so I understand all customers. But the PM takes an action of running 3 user tests disguised as onboarding review. Yeah. The result, users contradicted sales assumptions. Sales said, okay, maybe our enterprise clients aren't the full picture. Yeah. Okay, so questions to ask when research culture is weak at your company, right? Number 1, what will happen if we are wrong? These are real questions. If you're building something and nobody's doing any user research, nobody has spoken. There are companies where like nobody has spoken to customer in weeks, not a single customer in weeks, and everybody's fine and everybody's building. What are you building if you're not talking to customers, right? What will happen if we are wrong? It's a very real question. And then another question to ask is, what's the smallest thing we can validate today? The smallest thing, you know, baby steps, just start. Which customer behavior is unclear? What metric are we trying to move? Remember that we're doing outcome over output, right? We are not a feature factory. We are focused on outcomes. We are not successful until the business is successful, until the customer is successful, right? Shipping a product is not success. I was talking to someone the other day, like, when you ship a product, right, you need to think about life after you ship a product. What's the go-to-market strategy? Are you working with marketing on your GTM plan? Do you have a product strategy? All of these factors are super important, right? And are you validating your assumptions along the way? Yeah. What metrics and what are the key metrics you're trying to know, right? What are your outcome metrics, your input metrics, all of those things? Do you have a metrics dashboard? It's important that you are measuring as much as possible. Yeah, because we cannot improve what we are not measuring. So what metrics are we trying to move as a, you know, product organization? And then what do we want to be true in the next 90 days? So you need to have time box, right? So have time frames that you're using for your measurements. It's also very, very important. If you use whatever, like you're very you're not structured in what time frames you're looking at, that's also a problem. Yeah. Daily time frame, weekly time frame, monthly time frame, 30 days, 60 days, all those things are very, very important, right? So what do we want to be true in the next 90 days? It forces outcome over outputs thinking. Yeah. So that's all from me today. Thank you so much, everyone. Do we have questions?
Thank you so much, Ebube. That was a very awesome and exciting section. So please, everyone, if you have any question that you need clarity or answer on, you can just raise up your hand, or you can actually just type in your question in the comment box.
Ibrahim's hand is up.
Okay, Ibrahim, please go ahead, please.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Sorry, I joined the meeting late, but during your presentation, I was able to gain the insight of conducting a permissionless search. So I want to ask that, what are the complications of conducting a user research in an organization if you don't have the necessary permission to do so? Is it something that can just fly over easily? And are you, as a product manager, allowed to just have access and conduct researches yourself, solely yourself, without needing permission from the stakeholders in the organization? Thank you.
Okay, so you have access to information like your customer's email address. I want to believe that. Is that yes or no? Email addresses of your customers, phone numbers of your customers. Yeah, so that's what I mean. You can reach out to them. Please, can I get, introduce yourself, tell them what you're trying to achieve, that, you're trying to improve their experience on your product, and ask them for maybe 30 minutes of your time or even 20 minutes, because you want to start small, remember. And then just talk to them. Yeah.
Okay,
so if anybody has
thank
agreed to talk to you, that shouldn't be a problem. Remember that we said something. It is sometimes better to ask for forgiveness after, right? So you talk to customers, get insights, strong insights, and then you go and meet the stakeholders and say, oh, I spoke to 5 customers, and these were the things I discovered. This product that we're trying to build, this is not what customers need. We're trying to solve the wrong problem based off of these responses. I think we need to rethink, right? Or you might not even say, I think we need to rethink, because that might come up a bit too strong, depending on your organization, right? So if you're in a tough organization, that might not be great. But you can just say, oh, these are the insights I gleaned from talking to 5 customers. Yeah. So I don't think that's a problem.
Okay, thank you very much for that. My second question is about having political intelligence as a product manager. So I want to ask a personal question. Can you give us part of your personal experience in dealing with stakeholders politically? Like, what are the political tactics you used in presenting your information to them?
So first of all, I'm very grateful for the organization I work at the moment. It's not a tough organization at all. There's a lot of psychological safety. So we don't have to play politics to get what we want most of the time, like 99% of the time. Yeah. But there's been times in my career where I had to, apply political intelligence, a lot of times actually. And the example I gave was exactly what I did. I was trying to make a decision about something, and I knew that I felt it in my bones that was the right decision to make. Yeah. But there was somebody on the exec team that did not agree with me. So we were supposed to have a meeting, right? And so I called almost every other person that was going to be on that call to align myself with them. Yeah. So I called them, heard their thoughts first, and then explained what I was trying to do and why I was trying to do it, and showed them why I thought that was a better idea. And, I was able to get a lot of them on my side, right? And then when we got into that call, there were other people that were speaking in my favor, that were defending me, that were defending that particular idea that I had. and I was able to get what I wanted at the time. Yeah. So I've seen it work for me, not once, not twice. That's why I say apply political intelligence. Yes, very great. It works.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Very soon.
Yeah. Okay, any other question? Okay, Senna, please go ahead.
Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. So, thank you very much for the information that you provided. I think it does a lot of good. And I currently work on a product that is now going into beta, right?
Okay.
Beta testing. So it would mean that for us as a group, it is important for us to like put down some of these structures in getting the responses that we need. Because at the end of the day, it's very foundational to the success of the product, right? And sometimes during sessions like this, the advice or the skills that are given to you are normally reflective of companies that have passed these initial stage, almost like they are running on some sort of momentum. And I want to find out how all of these can translate on a very reflective of the stage that we are currently on, so that it's easier to build the foundations now than to be tackling it when the product off the ground. Thank you.
Okay. So if I get you correctly, you're building a new product from scratch, right? Completely. You don't have any customers yet?
No, just the initial users that we interviewed that showed some sort of enthusiasm towards the product. So basically, we built the whole concept around those people who showed the initial enthusiasm. Yes.
And the sample set, the people, number of people interviewed, was it a lot? Or first of all, do you have a product strategy?
Yes, we do. We do.
Okay. And are you validating the riskiest parts of your product strategy? When you spoke to these people, did you validate it? Did you, beyond even speaking to them, did you use other like validation techniques like competitive analysis, market research?
Okay, so the very initial method we used was going to these individuals to talk to them. So heads of institutions and then the other people that make up the subgroups. So that was the initial ones. We pre-recorded we recorded the interviews, translated them, and from there, that's what we use. Competitive analysis, we don't have a lot of structured competitors based on the model that we are currently using. So, yeah, and then the closest competitor, we will. All we still have is these initial people that we spoke to still still come to us like, oh, how far? Because we did experience. And so that is the only thing that we have.
All right. First of all, can you hear me? I think there was a bit of a lag.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. You're actually already on the right track, and I like that you're talking to customers and there's this symbiotic, relationship going on, because you mentioned that as you build, these people are constantly coming to ask for, okay, is this product ready? And you're constantly speaking to them. So the first version of the product you built, did you build an MVP or did you build the entire thing? So basically, you built an MVP. I'm just going to assume that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So you're already speaking to customers, and that's great. You need to also have an analytic tool set up and observability, both like on the technical side and on the product side. Those things are like super important. So if anything like happens, or you have insights, real-time insights, events. I don't know if you work in an organization that supports user research, or if you work in an organization that supports that. you want to like have this thing set up ASAP, right? That's very important, right? Because it's important that you're paying attention to the data. If after you launch this product, okay, because it's still in the very early stages, so you can see in real time as people sign up from admin, all of that information is there. But it's important that you're focused on validating your assumptions in these very early stages. So the MVP you've launched, make sure that you are constantly, like if something is not working, maybe your adoption is slow, test your channels, your adoption channels, right? Try to make sure that you tailor your customer acquisition channels, you tailor these channels to the persona that you're building for. Super important, right? Remember what I said earlier. When you launch a new product, PMF is your primary focus, right? You need to ensure that you get that product market fit. And the two core metrics for PMF are adoption and retention. Yeah. So you want to focus on ensuring that the adoption channels that you're using are optimized for the persona, the kind of customer that you want, right? And so if you're getting in enough customers, you want to also make sure that you're retaining them. So if you notice that customers are dropping off, you want to find out why they are dropping off and fix those issues ASAP. You're actually pretty lucky because your product's in the early stage. Yeah. So you're not dealing with too many customers, right, in the very early stage. So it's easier for you to do user research, right? It's easier for you to, reach out to people, talk to them and make changes quickly. So I would say in a nutshell, focus on aggressively on acquisition and retention. Yeah. If you notice that you're not acquiring enough customers, look at your channels, talk to customers. Why are they not adopting your product? Make changes quickly as possible. If you notice that the customers that you are acquiring are not staying, talk to them, find out. Also do other forms of research. Research your market. I would always say don't only rely on customer research and only like customer research is super important, but don't rely on just that. Yeah, look for other channels as well. Market research. If there are other people in your industry that are doing something similar, there's a quote that's a lot of people I respect, or someone I respect actually says a lot, and he says success leaves clues, right? So it's important that you really understand your competitive landscape. The people that are in that space that are doing something similar to what you're doing, it's important that you analyze them. What strategies are they using? What has worked for them? And then you don't want to just take what has worked for them and implement it exactly how they've implemented it. You want to also, when you implement it, you want to measure, right? Measuring is super important because I always say that sometimes you might implement something just because you've seen a competitor implement it, but they might have done it for a completely different reason. So you want to validate and measure as much as possible and be very aggressive about measuring things and about iterating. Do you get? So yeah, iterate until you hit PMF. That's my advice for you. And well done, Senna. I like how you're doing beta testing. It shows that you're really paying attention to a lot of these things and talking to customers. That's wonderful. Okay. Any further? First of all, does it answer your question, Senna? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It does. Thank you very much.
All right, great. Okay, any further questions? All right, thank you so much, everyone. It's been an amazing time spending time with every one of us.
All right.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, welcome.
All right, so thank you so much, Ebube, for today's webinar. And I want to say a big thanks to everyone that joined. Your question and contribution was very great. To this question, very amazing. And I want to thank you again for joining. And if you find this question very insightful, you can come follow Ebube on LinkedIn. I would like if you can put your LinkedIn link in the comment section so that those on call right now can actually follow and connect with your LinkedIn.
Okay, let me do that now.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, and we've come to the content on today's Quidax session. I just want to thank everyone for joining me. And the next Quidax session we have like this. So until the other can
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much for joining, everyone. I think the next thing we're going to be announcing now is our Hangout, right? So if you've not been for the Hangout, please go and play. It's going to be an amazing time. And you get to apply some of the things you've learned here today. So you can come and do user research in person if if any of our people meet your user persona. So yeah, go and pay for the hangouts. You are the hangout on the 6th of December. And thank you very much for joining. Thank you, Mano. Thank you, everyone. And you the rest of the evening.
All right, you guys have a nice evening. Good night.